for this other sport, or maybe, and it's hard to then actually get an understanding of what we're
Absolutely.
speaking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, no, I
So
understand.
for the purpose of the episode, we'll talk about running and rugby.
Yeah.
A plant-based diet is anything that excludes animal products. So I think we've covered kind of what your role is as a performance nutritionist, and you've given us kind of what you do. But what does a typical day in the life look like? Because we've had a bit of a chat before the episode, and you're busy. You're like super busy. So tell us.
So yeah, a day in the life for me, probably a lot of miles, as we discussed earlier. I think traveling up and down to different clubs, different areas, often tends to be what I get up to. I think majority of the time, regardless how I try and dress it up, it's education. I work a lot in the youth sports space, a little bit in kind of the professional sports space as well. But even so, it's still education regardless. And they can come in different forms of webinars, workshops, one-to-one, small group catch-ups, however that might look. So I suppose typical day for me, I'd say as a nutritionist, a decent breakfast in the morning is always a go-to. You'd be glad to know that I also have oats as well. So we're both in trouble there with the new band adverts. But an overnight oats is typically what I'll eat first thing in the morning, just to get me going and get me ready to go. Recently jumped on, I suppose, the life hack of not having your coffee as soon as you wake up, and actually delaying that slightly. So I'll often go for an electrolyte based drink with salts in to make sure that I'm getting rehydrated from a long night's sleep. And then I'll be on the road, or I'll be wherever I might be. So typically if I'm, going over to where I live in Huddersfield up to Leeds, I'll be driving quite early morning to try and miss the rush hour of traffic, try and get a gym session in at whichever club that I'm going to at that time. And then typically it's a mixture really of kind of working with the team behind the team. So, in multidisciplinary meetings, discussing players, pathways, and supporting them specifically around kind of how we can better them from a potential body composition point of view. So that meaning like your lean mass, your body fat percentage, and your overall weight. Comparing that, especially in like the youth sports space, to the kind of, I suppose, role models to an extent that they might aspire to be in the first team. So a really good example is, typically speaking, a centre back in the championship is between kind of 80 to 90 kilograms. But actually we can break that down at the, whichever squad I might be working with, as to which player are you most like within that first team, and how can we make sure that your nutrition is in place to be able to go on and develop that. Normally, again, that'll come through multiple interventions of sitting down one-to-one and actually mapping out that process and helping them pick the right foods. And then from there, I suppose, a lot of education workshops in and around the country. So like yesterday, I spent the daytime at Leeds United at one of the clubs that I work at, doing a lot of work around like the one-to-ones. We actually had our Christmas dinner, which was quite fun. So making sure that the lads enjoyed the Christmas dinner, but not too much, and kept a limit on the pigs in blankets and the desserts, but everything else was fair game. And then once I'd finished there, travelling across to St Helens Rugby Club to work with their under-19s pathway, women's side, talking all about kind of, I suppose, women's health in nutrition, but also how to fuel specifically as a rugby player for the day, and where you can get certain sources of foods from, portion sizes, etc. I suppose that kind of day-to-day is what my days look like. Some days are more weighted towards one-to-ones, others are more weighted towards I suppose, workshops, and then I get the odd opportunity to come on a podcast and switch off from work for a couple of hours to enjoy a conversation, which is always good fun.
Nice. What a day. A couple things I'm going to pick on there. Firstly, your breakfast overnight oats. Love that. I have that as well.
Yeah.
But you said you have water with some salt, so an electrolyte drink. Why is it not enough to just have a glass of water? Why are you having it with electrolytes or salts?
That's a really good question. So if we think about the time period that we spend asleep, we don't, if we have the perfect night's sleep, so we have, we go to bed and we wake up and we have an 8-hour period, there's very little opportunity in those 8 hours or 8 to 9 hours that we should be getting where we can actually take a sip of water or drink or stay hydrated. Now, you imagine during the day, I know it's a little bit different because we're moving around and we're going around the place, but if you spent 8 hours without drinking any form of liquid, the body's going to be fairly dehydrated, regardless of how well you've prepped the body before those 8 hours. We're going to find a level of dehydration that we're not going to be able to eradicate with just water. A lot of people sweat during the night and don't realize it. I'm one of those that I don't wake up in the morning thinking, God, I need a shower this morning because I've sweated loads. But we know that we that we sweat during the night. So one of the big things for me is making sure I'm replacing what's lost through sweating. And also I'm quite cautious sometimes of, if I drink too much water leading up to going to sleep, I'm going to be up and down to the toilet in the night. So again, knowing that I'm probably going to bed borderline hydrated, and as a nutritionist, obviously that should scare you, because you're busy preaching it all day long and talking about that. So yeah, waking up in the morning and just replacing the sodium or the salts that are lost through sweating during the night. And it stops me jumping for a coffee. I think I do have a glass of water as well, or I'll take a bottle of water on the road with me, depending how quick I'm out of the house. But knowing that water is not really going to satisfy me, I suppose. Whereas like a coffee or a tea would, and knowing that actually I should wait because, in terms of our systems, to keep it simple, our systems that actually utilize caffeine and help give us a boost of energy take around 90 minutes after our waking time to kick in. So it's pointless having a coffee as soon as we wake up. I used to be a classic in the car, eat my breakfast really quick, have my glass of water with without electrolytes in, and then coffee as soon as I get in the car. I've probably only been awake around 30-45 minutes at that point. So what I realised was, for myself as well, and again, trying to practice what you preach instead of being the practitioner that's that classic, do as I say, not as I do, and trying to lead by example is, well, I do like water, but I don't want water first thing in the morning. So let's have something with a bit of taste in it, like an electrolyte. And then that allows me to then progress to the coffee when it's ready to have. So that's probably my rationale behind it from my perspective. But again, you could have just water, but I feel as though hydration wouldn't be, I suppose, optimized at that point.
So we're looking at that from to achieve optimal hydration, rather than just everyday people that are just waking up, not really too concerned whether they're hydrated. We're looking at that from, obviously, as well, practicing what you preach.
Yeah, and I think the biggest test as well is when you wake up in the morning, see what colour your urine is when you go for a morning wee. I can guarantee it's not, that translucent, clear, like pale colour that we're after from a hydrated perspective. And it's not possible to do that unless you set an alarm like every couple of hours to get up and drink water, which would absolutely trash your sleep. So there'd be no point doing that. So it's then like, well, how can we try and get that back to optimal quicker? And, in all of my workshops and one-to-ones, I'm talking about using electrolytes to kind of support hydration and fluid balance. So why wouldn't, we bring it into everyday life as a nutritionist as well?
Yeah, cool. No, thank you for clearing that up.
Right.
And secondly, you work with a multidisciplinary team most of the time in these clubs. What other disciplinaries are you working with?
Yeah, really good question. I think like in an MDT, as it's shortened to, or multidisciplinary team, there is a lot of moving parts, I suppose. And a lot of people would kind of throw out the easy ones. Oh, you must work with a strength and conditioning coach or a physical development coach, depending on what club you're at and the title they hold. And a physiotherapist would be like the key ones. But actually, there's psychologists, there's head of medicals, there's coaches, assistant coaches, technical coaches, depending on clubs, they might have, like in rugby, an attacking and a defensive coach. And often what will happen is you'll split off into smaller multidisciplinary teams, i.e. the performance and medical team and then the coaching team. But then every now and again you will come together, or quite frequently you'll come together as a larger MDT group to discuss kind of, conversations around players, because as much as my role within clubs where I work is very nutrition based, I also have to know what they want out of that player from the rugby demands or the footballing demands. So then I can firstly, I suppose, tailor my approach and conversation with the athlete to ensure that they're happy with, why we're going after a certain metric, for example, increasing lean body mass and putting it into an action in their sport, like rugby. Well, actually, we want to see you make more line breaks, or we want to see you make, more meters gained if you're a prop forward or second row, for example. And that comes from knowing what the coach is working on them with in their like individual performance sessions. So the MDTs, obviously everybody encompassed as a big umbrella, but most of the time I find myself sat in that kind of performance department. So a lot of medical based staff, psychologists, physios, S&Cs, and then often, quite often, head of performances that oversee all of that as well and do a really good job of ensuring that we're all working in unison instead of in small little silos on our own. I think, sport can be quite a lonely place as a practitioner. If you're the only nutritionist at the club, it might be the case that you're somebody who is kind of working on nutrition on your own, but actually you need to make sure that you're doing all of the bits with all of the other departments as well to support, that holistic approach to performance.
Yeah, I imagine.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip,
click here to get the full episode. And don't forget to subscribe.